Let's just start by turning. So the part of our body that we're sort of in a sense least familiar with is the sacrum. And it's the part we need to become most familiar with. So you really want to just feel that bone and feel it in the middle of the circle that you're creating. It's not behind the circle, it's in the middle. Yeah, so when you think to yourself, basically when you think, the front brain becomes heavy and it tends to do this, yeah? So that image of the thinker, you know, with his forehead on his fist, his head tilted forwards. So in a sense, what we're trying to do is get into the back brain, really, to activate that, to just let this relax and open up so that it's no longer tightening, it's no longer thinking. Thinking is always a tension that we install. You cannot be relaxed if you're thinking. Thinking requires tension. You know, that's a real important insight. And so the back brain, it's a bit like the gut, you know, the brain in the gut that we try to activate when we put the mind in the dantian. It's that really primitive, intuitive part of you that would be required for survival if you were living in the wild, in the dangerous wild. Yeah. This has only come to dominance because we've unwilded ourselves. So we've created an environment which is danger-free, largely. And that has enabled the front brain to take over. So just feel the sacrum. There's like a sort of vertical line hanging through it, which extends into the tailbone. We just want that to be vertical. So when they say lower back vertical in Tai Chi, it's just the sacrum and the vertebra above it. So the part of your spine that's beneath the Min Meng. You want that to be vertical, as though it's hanging down. And then the part of the spine above that can really do anything. You know, that could sort of lean forwards like this, yeah, or it could lean back like this. As long as this bottom bit just stays vertical, then your upper back just moves with the occasion, in a sense. Yeah, so we just set up something really simple like this and just watch it. You know, you need to take advantage. You need to sort of be able to sort of almost stand back and watch yourself and see that as soon as you start thinking to yourself, basically this happens. You come heavily into here and you come out of your root. Yeah. Yeah, so the only way you'll start working, basically start meditation, start working to quieten that noisy mind, is if you become convinced of its absolute uselessness. That's the thing that's holding us back. It's our inability to control our own minds. I saw a quote yesterday that said, it's not peace of mind that we're after, it's peace from mind. Yeah. So it's just that, you know, just acquiring silence, inner silence. And then just let the head go. Just feel that movement, like being on a swing. You're just letting the world go by. Yeah, if you can remember how it was, the first time you went on a swing. I mean, I was quite old, so I can remember it. And it's like, you're frightened. And so you're looking at things to help give yourself some sort of sense of where you are, some security. But then when you finally let that go, it's such pleasure. Yeah. It's the closest we get to bliss. So this is a blissful exercise. So you're just feeling pure movement. And remember those three components of relaxation: sinking, letting gravity take over; expanding, away from the center, because tension is just a contraction into something; and opening. So it's opening is slightly different from expanding, because you expand into this world, but you open into another world. Opening is always into a heightened state. It's like a switch, So this centrifugal force is expanding me out. But if I can really just open the joints, really just let them ease open. And it's the only thing that stops the opening is fear. So you open into the infinite in a sense. So an infinite set is just an open set, one that has a hole in it somewhere, so it can always be added to. So you open into process. So without the opening, there's really no spirit, because there doesn't need to be. You're safe in your own cozy world. It's only when you open and the world expands infinitely that you're in danger, and you need spirit to save the day. Okay, and now let's just bring it to riding horse. And just feeling the sacrum hanging down, yeah? You don't want to pull the tail under, because that will just smother a tension with another tension. You just want to relax so that the sacrum can just hang down from the Min Meng, really. So there's almost a sense that your legs come up and they sort of hold on at the Min Meng, and then what's beneath it can just drop down and relax down. Almost like your sacrum is no longer a structural instrument. So any sense of your tail and your sacrum pointing backwards, which is how it generally is if our legs are straight, and your heart won't open, basically. So when this hangs down properly, there's a sense that it's underneath the heart, and the heart is encouraged to, like a flower that's opening up to the sun. So there's a sense that the heart is opening to the heavens, and that the head is expanding and becoming lighter, yeah, almost like it's wanting to fly like a balloon. And then your legs just have to be strong enough to maintain an openness. Now that's a really tall order, because the legs are normally used to maintain a state. Yeah, we want the legs to maintain a process of opening. Yeah, it's always active, gerundive, and processual. Yeah, this continuous present that's just taking you. So as soon as you start thinking, this will lose its place. Yeah, this will come back like this. And it's tiny, you know, that it can just be like a millimeter, and it just makes all the difference. And it's only when this is in the right position that this whole area can then relax. You know, it says in the classics, relax the waist. You know, it's such a difficult one to understand. But it all comes from just getting this in the right place. Okay, and now let's just move side to side. Okay, and now just feeling the fullness, feeling the spring of the leg. I sink into the leg, and I just want the leg to be conditioned with spirit. So I want it to have a bit of fight in it. So as I sink into it, it becomes a point where it says, fuck off, and it just throws me back, yeah? Because it's had enough, but, you know, in a gentle way. Yeah, so I very much want it to feel that it's a decision of my leg rather than the decision of my mind. I haven't decided, okay, now I'm going to move back. That will make it look very regimented and mechanical, like a soldier. Yeah, soldiers are just eminently forceful, so they don't know anything about energy. It's all the imposition of orders from above, even above them. Yeah. So this is all about getting deep down and finding the spark of spirit that's animating the action. I sink into the leg and the leg throws me back, but just feel the spirit. I sink into it and way, there's like a rise, and I just let my body go with it. Yeah, so you have to be able to allow the work to cheer you up. Yeah, you have to allow the work to lift your spirit. There's a lovely poem by Robert Creeley about the sunset. And he says, "Oh, who is so cozy with despair and all, they will not come to the last great spectacle of the day." Yeah. So you're always willing to let spirit take you. It's there all the time, but we ignore it way. Yeah, so that spring in the leg, it doesn't just move your body. As you sink into it and it springs up, it opens the heart and it lightens the head. Yeah. So this is just letting it into the upper body. Yeah. So I'm not just a laborer that's trudging from leg to leg. I'm an aesthete that's allowing these refinements to come up into my body. I'm a connoisseur of spirit. Yeah. So excess yin, too much weight, will become excess yang, will become yin. Yeah. So I sink into it, and it doesn't want to go to 100%. It wants to sort of throw back. Yeah. It's basically just the yin yang symbol. Yeah. So it's almost like a perpetual motion machine, perpetual mobile way. And there's a sense that, you know, you don't want to stop. That time we were doing some exercise with John, and someone bleated from the back, "When are we going to stop?" And he says, "When you no longer want to stop." So just keep it going, and it will wake up something and then change. Yeah, so your weight is sinking, but the spirit is rising. Ooh, that's what the leg is for, to bring your spirit up. Getting from A to B is like a byproduct. Now let's just bring it back to base. So again, first thing you do when you get into riding horse is just try and feel the sacrum into its vertical mode. So the legs very much have to come up and clasp it from above, as though. Feel the vertical sacrum affecting your mind. And just relaxing open. And so when you relax into the open, it's as though you're relaxing into time rather than onto time. You know, normally when we relax, you get this sense of like almost like you're surfing time. Yeah? Time is sort of taking you. But when you really open up, you can sink into time and you become sort of untimely. Yeah? Like Nietzsche, you know, he could just really choose great titles for his books, you know, untimely meditations. You know, you slip out of time, but it's not, you slip out of chronological time by really slipping deep into time. And then everything is present. This is what John was really interested in. You know, the past and the future, they've all come in to join you in the present. You know that phrase of John's, I am with you out of time. Okay, and now let's just move again side to side, but now concentrating on the emptying. So here my leg has become so empty that it has no choice but to start filling again. If it wants to remain active in any way, you know, it has to sort of fill. So the leg, as soon as it becomes straight, it wants to bend. I just want to feel that. Feel it as a yielding, as a breaking, as a bending. It's giving way. It's removing itself to make space for the other. Yeah. Wow. And again, we just want to feel it. Feel how it affects you. Feel how it affects the head. You know, it's a bit different, you know, when you're sort of springing back, then the head just sort of does this. Yeah. Whereas when you're pulling, it's more like it's opening up like a bounded space rather than just opening up into an unbounded space. It's like different infinities. Just feel it, it sort of just opens you, but opens you like this into your ward off, yeah? It encloses, but that space you've enclosed is infinitely rich. It's a continuum. There's always room for another way. Yeah, so just feel the difference between the openness that comes from the full becoming empty to the openness that's from the empty becoming full. So in a sense, this has much more finesse and it's much more useful. And the other, when you expand from here, it's difficult to direct. It's a bit like attacking without really seeing the target. Whereas this is really, you're really aware of that other person that's going to come into your embrace. They're drawing you to them. Your love of adventure is such that your yielding is drawing you into the fray rather than making you fearfully cower from it. Ooh. And then just every now and then just come back to the sacrum, just feel it. Is it behaving itself? Okay, let's just bring it back. Again, just, yeah. So for me, it's always revealing when I come back to riding horse, just how tense the previous thing has made my sacrum and tailbone. So ideally, we would like what we do to come from the relaxation here, not come from the tension here. Yeah. So it's from my root rather than this image of a root, this pretend root that is the tension here. Okay, and now let's just try that again. But now just getting it, first of all, let's just breathe. Yeah. So let's get this going. Yeah, so we're just going to activate the belly muscles again a bit. So just drawing in the belly, breathing out, and then expanding and letting that draw the air in. And breathe in. Yeah, so ideally this is not affecting the sacrum. The sacrum is just remains still, hanging down. But when you do this, there's a tendency to bring it under. And when you do this, there's a tendency for it to angle back a little bit. But it's not. But, you know, so what's important is not just how a thing is, but how it's tending to be, what the future holds. Yeah. So as I draw in, it's still hanging down because I don't want to tense the muscles around it to pull it under. Yeah. But it's as though it wants to come under. Yeah. And then I release here, and it's as though it wants to go back. Okay, now let's try one side at a time. So just here, but again, we want it just to come from just gently tightening here. So it's not a turn of the hip. It's almost like I don't really want my hips to turn. I just want to pull here to bring the hand in, and then I pull here, and that lets the other hand out. So 1, and 2. So pull. Yeah, it can just be very gentle. And again, if you do it really slow, then it has very much a yielding quality of sort of giving way. Yeah. You're taking yourself out of the equation so that someone else can take over. You know, you're second best. Yeah. So here. And this sense that you're sort of enclosing something. So that's yielding mind. Yielding mind is just really humble, will always give way. Just try your best to just feel the center of that contraction. That should be the dantian that activates the muscles to give that pulling action. Yeah, so the yielding encloses. It's like there's a little pull here and it gets enclosed. And if you do that quick, then it will send out this sort of an energy wave. And it's that you attack with in Tai Chi. So in Tai Chi, you never really attack. You even attack by yielding. Yeah. I mean, Johnny never attacked. Yeah. You always got this sense of, oh, it was like he'd just contract into himself, and that would just send out this sort of strong wave. So he'd never do this. Yeah. To him, that would be just so coarse. He just would not be able to tolerate it. Yeah, in order to pull well, you need to really release it first. Yeah, so the turn happens in the waist, in the muscles, rather than the bones just shifting. So here this rolls into itself, and I pull. This rolls into itself. Now that image of young Chen Fu, he was so fat. He was like 6'4", so like 10 centimeters taller than me. And he weighed over 300 pounds. And apparently when someone punched him, their fist would just disappear into his gut. You know, they couldn't punch his face because he was too high, the little Chinese. So their fist would go into his gut and then he would just tighten and they wouldn't be able to pull it out. Yeah. And so he would relax and then tighten the muscles, and that would trap their fist. Yeah. So it's as though you relax here, you let the fist come in, and then you tighten around it. Yeah. So the turning is very much a byproduct of capturing the other person's spirit. You put it in a little box inside your belly and you don't give it back. One. Okay. And now let's bring it back. Again, just retrieve this. Yeah, so to have this sort of such that it wants to stay vertical, stay relaxed. The part of the spine just above it, you know, the lumbar vertebra above the bottom one, that whole area has to just really relax. Yeah. So the min, you know, if you think of like the min meng, if you think of it being sort of inside the spine a little bit, then that curve of the lumbar spine is really pressing on it, it's really crunching it. So we just need to straighten that so that the back of the spine here can just open, all the vertebra can just open a little bit, so that the min meng is sort of freed a little bit. It's all these things, it's very sort of animalistic, yeah. They're like little animals, all these things. And when you open the door to the cage, yeah, they don't just charge out. It's like, oh shit, you know, and they sort of, they're careful, tentative, yeah. And you just have to become really good at coaxing. That's saying, you know, just using a bit of food, you know, a cheeseburger. That's what they use to coax the feral dogs. Okay, and now let's just go from leg to leg again a little bit. But now here, just a little tiny ting in the belly. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be muscular. It's just like there's a little light. You just turn a light on. It's like ping, ping. So we just want to feel the effectiveness of this light in the belly, the spirit in the belly. So bing. Yeah. So when that switches on, it's like there's a sort of little contraction into it, and that allows everything beyond it to release. Yeah. So that's the switch really that opens the joints. Yeah. So I just ping here, ping. Yeah. So a local tension allows a global relaxation. Yeah. So bar. So I just pull here, and it allows everything to just open a little bit and just start working the way it should. Yeah. So it's a tension right at the core of the action. It's not a tension from on high. I'm not an authority that's giving orders to a slave. Yeah. We just really have to just try and leave that slave mentality behind. You know, of being, you know, of just wanting to be told what to do. Yeah, so this is the correct sort of tension that we're looking at. Way. And it's like a spark, it's like a switch, it's sudden. When I went on that advanced driving course here, the teacher was really good. And he was saying that if you look at the reports that are written by people that have had accidents on the road, the word you always encounter is suddenly. Yeah? It's an event. It's a sudden, unexpected occurrence. Yeah? An accident, a car accident. You're chugging along. I mean, I had one recently, and you're sort of just chugging along as though everything is fine. Yeah? It's the last thing you expect. And in a sense, that should alert you to the fact that it's going to come. And then suddenly, fuck, it's the whole world is completely different. Yeah. This energy has just come in and shattered everything. Yeah. So that's what you want, that feeling of here, but obviously on a tiny scale. Yeah. So you can't trigger the event, but you have to allow it. Yeah. So it's not me. If it was me doing this, it'd be it'd be coarse, because I'm stupid and coarse. I'm a human being. I can't be anything else. Yeah. But the divine aspect in you, that you can just make space, and that's what requires that real lightness, that lightness of spirit. It's like a playfulness. Wow. Yeah. So it's the tightening here, it's that really subtle pull. And it's like a pull, it's like a yearning pull. A lot of tears attached to it. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, so a yielding that generates a call. Yeah. So where does the call come from? It feels like it's coming from the other. They're calling me to come towards them. But really, it's just my openness to the other. And that's just expressed by this little twinge here. So the call is just as much from inside me as it is from outside. Yeah. So, okay, so let's bring it back. Yes, all of these things that, they have to be practiced, but you don't need to practice them within a practice session. Yeah. You can just, be going out for a walk, just be doing any sort of activity really, including not doing anything. And, if you have that gentle, light mind that never looks at something straight like this, that's the death. With that lovely quote of the Buddha, life is never quite as serious as the mind thinks it is. So it's just that real sort of light. And that's all lightness is just so attractive. When you see it in another person, you just want to go to them, because you're going to get good energy. When you see someone really serious, then you think, oh, fuck, I'll leave them alone. Well, I met the great-grandson of one of my old people last week. I knew exactly what he looked like because her house is just covered in photographs of him. And he looks really sort of dour and serious, you know. And but every now and then his face explodes into a smile, you know. I think, Jesus, you know. So this is pulling down, yeah. Everything you do will tend to conspire against this getting into the right position, yeah. Especially anything that involves communication with words, yeah. Either communicating with yourself by talking to yourself or talking to others. Now, I think we're just generally really haunted by the unavoidable fact that whenever we open our mouths to speak, we are lying. Yeah, we are misrepresenting ourselves because there isn't a language that can possibly represent you. It's the same as there isn't possibly an MP that could represent you, and you're an individual. You're different than others. Yeah. So that all these democratic processes are like approximations that inhibit and bring you down. Yeah, they level everything. Yeah, not by bringing everything up, but by pressing things down. Yeah. So this is why spirit's just so important, but it's the spirit that comes from the sinking. I'm sinking down and whoa, and I become magnificent. Okay. Let's just try a little bit. Let's just try a little bit of the stepping one. Yeah. We're just really getting it all to come from the stepping leg. So I'm sinking into the stepping leg and it's throwing me back. And then I step with it. And then the leg bends and pulls me forwards. And then it throws me back. Yeah. So this leg is just supporting me. It's sort of passive. It's doing its good job. And pull and push. Yeah. So just keep it going, concentrating on the left leg, the one that you're stepping with. Yeah. So this is the process of practice. You know, you set something up, you keep it going, and then it's like the spirit gets a bit bored and it starts to notice other things. Yeah. So you're concentrating on the left leg so that you can notice what's happening in the right. Yeah. Because that right really has to receive you. And in order to receive you, all of these muscles here have to really relax so that your sacrum can remain vertical. Yeah. So there's a hell of a lot has to happen in that right leg just to be able to support you properly without corrupting your posture. Yeah. So what do I have to do with my legs to allow the sacrum to remain relaxed and hanging? It's really difficult. So you just have to just look. And again, it's as you come into the leg, it's like this area here, the hip area, really has to expand. So there's just space for all those micro adjustments. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll just be doing this. Yeah. It'll just be a stiffness here. Yeah. You want it to open out. Yeah, and what's revealing about partner work, yeah, is that the presence of the other, you know, if they're sympathetic, will always improve you. Now, you'll do it better in the presence of the other. So your own mind, your own compassionate mind needs to become that other. You are attending this action. As soon as you get distracted, you'll get tense. Yeah? That's what I always say to my student, the only thing we always have in common, every human being has in common, is that we are all our own worst enemies. This is why we need the other. Yeah. Without them, we would continue getting it horribly wrong. And now let's just get the hands in. So I yield. I yield. Yeah, so the hand that's coming out is just, that's the least important one. It's the one that's yielding. So the hand coming out is just coming out as a product of the yielding. You know, the energy's got to go somewhere. So I yield, it squeezes the energy into the other side, because you always yield into the filling foot, which empties the other side and allows energy to manifest. So 1, 2. Yeah, so as you come forward, so just really feel that front foot posture, that feeling of this settling down. Only 70% in the front foot, remember. If you want any more, then you're generally going to have to do that, which means you've come up out of your root. This is dangling down. There's a real fold here. So what you don't want is for the step forwards to pull your hip forwards like this. The hip stays back, the knee goes forwards. The hip stays back, almost like it's reluctant to move. And if anything will go down, there's a sense that the 2 hip bones are almost pointing with your sacrum down. And it's only when you have that that you get this natural sort of, this feeling that the sinking has produced the up, which is so much of Chen Manqing's Tai Chi. And that picture of him uprooting William Chen, you know, he's just standing there beautifully vertical, and William Chen has a sense almost like he's going to come up and over his head. Yeah, so none of this pressing and firing the person backwards, which is so coarse. You're sinking down into your posture. This is retrieving the vertical. You will always lose it a little bit when you take a foot off the ground. And whoa, elbows heavy, fingers pointing to the sky. Every time you come into a leg, that's what you're aiming for, especially the front leg. So 1 and ooh. And then there really is a sense that you've got under the person. You've uprooted them with your energy, not just with your hand. Yeah? Okay, and now let's just try a little bit here. So first, just get it going. So I bounce back, I pull forwards, I bounce back. Yeah, so the elastic becomes the spring and the spring becomes the elastic. I pull with elasticity, I bounce with the spring. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah. So this it will always, you know, so when you're concentrating on it, it sort of the will actually make the front bit, so that it will always tend to do this. It will always tend to pull you forwards. So that's when you come back to the sacrum and just say, okay, I sit down into it. Because I'm doing everything that I do, not in order to make physical movements, but in order to get my spirit to rise. That's the goal, that's the prize. And that will only happen if your sacrum is vertical. This is John's great insight. Even Chen Manqing didn't have it that well. So here, this is vertical and something can lift up through me. So first and foremost, John was a great spirit master. He knew more about spirit than anyone I've come across. The worst thing for spirit is that mood of trying to get something right. The sort of anxiety that comes from feeling as though the teacher's expectations of you are too great, or your own expectations of yourself. That will always inhibit spirit. So it's only really when you relax into it and stop trying that the spirit will rise out of that lightness. Yeah. Wow. Ooh. And the only thing you can do is try your best. The trouble is when people say, I'm trying my best, they're not. They're being generally lazy. Okay, so now let's just bring it back to riding horse. Just feel the legs tired. So it's more difficult in a sense to get this. But you are in command of your moods. So even though you've got the mood of tiredness and wanting it to finish, you can just induce a mood of real lightness. Okay, now let's bring it just to attention. And now just here, just really just concentrate on the sacrum. You're trying not to let the straight legs push your tail back. You're still wanting that feeling of it hanging down vertically. Maybe it's a bit more proximate, but there's still the tendency. It's tending to the vertical, even if it's not vertical at the moment. As soon as I bent the leg, it would just fall into the vertical. Yeah. that's what's important. It's where it's going, not where it is. Yeah. This is what, when, as a teacher, if the student is practicing, if they're in any sense a good student, then you don't really care what their Tai Chi looks like, because it's just a matter of time. Yeah. Where they are at the moment is where they need to be, and where they are next week will be different. Yeah. And so, when you're teaching a good student, you tend to keep your mouth shut. Yeah, so imagine if an event, so an event is like a sudden occurrence that's totally unexpected. If an event was suddenly to happen now, someone suddenly to sort of throw a brick through the window, or the ceiling was to collapse where it's been leaking. And what would that do? It would just completely rip you out of your mind, and you would be with your body and your spirit. You would leap for safety with no thought, and you'd be ready for a good fight. Your spirit would be up. So that's what an event is. So what we want is to live a life of an event, an eventual life, a life of the event of spirit. And everything can be an event if you let it. The sunlight shining from that stool, they can all startle in the sense of not throwing you back and making your energy rise, but in the sense of opening you up. That's what we're looking for. That's why beauty is so important. When you see a flower or a young child, they take your breath away. They transport you into spirit space momentarily. So if your spirit's lively and gentle, then every step you take will be an event of spirit. It'll sparkle. And you can only really do that when you're on your own. Company, which is normally so good for you because it draws you out of yourself in a sort of relatively sort of coarse way, that will tend to flatten you out unless they're in that same charged spirit space as well. Remember, John was invited once to a student's dinner party, and he went, which was amazed me because he never went out. And I said to him, "Are you going to take Pip?" He says, "No way." He says, "She cramps my style." So it's that thing of having someone that you know too well. They will always pull you back to what it is that they think of you. This is why it's so wonderful when you go traveling. No one knows who you are. You can be whoever you want. So here, this heavy sacrum and the sense of Ura in a state of grace and with a sense of wonder.